This is Keith McDaniel, and today is October the 18th, 2024, and I am at the production studio here at Roane County High School. And today I've got a very special guest, one of my old classmates from the class of 1975, Woodrow Wilson Wright Jr.
Oh, yes.
Woody.
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Keith. Wow, this is amazing. I think this is my fifth grade classroom.
That's what I was about to say. You went to school here.
It was either in this one or across the hall.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's quiet.
You went to school
Matter
here.
of fact, it was across the hall, so this is not it.
That's all right. It pretty much looks the same, though, doesn't it, when you walked in?
It does. It's amazing.
It's amazing. All right, so this is about you and your life and your time growing up and living in Kingston and your memories about that. So I always start with, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Cleveland, Tennessee, Bradley Memorial Hospital, Cleveland, Tennessee, 1957. Mm-hmm. And we lived in Cleveland for about 3 years. And my dad got a job at the Kingston steam plant. Mm-hmm. And we moved to Kingston in 1961.
What did your dad do?
He was a labor foreman
at
the plant.
All
and
right.
we lived just across the street from the entrance up on the hill. As a matter of fact, there's still a tree there that was in our backyard.
Is that right?
And I remember the day when an official vehicle pulled up in the yard and explained to our family that you're going to have to move because the westbound lane of Interstate 40 is coming through your house.
Really?
They didn't own the house. It was a rental.
Yeah.
But we had to move from there to the interstate because it stopped at the river.
Yeah.
At that point.
At that
61.
point. Mm-hmm.
So we lived there until we had to go.
And where did you move to then?
We moved over behind, I can't remember the name, what the name of the hotel was, right there at the exit.
Oh, yeah, right.
In what they call Laddie Village.
Yeah, right.
So we were in the first little block there, and I went by there yesterday and took a look. Uh-huh. It's a different looking house than it was when we lived in it, of course.
I'm sure, of course.
But we lived there for a while, and then they bought a house up on Rio Vista on Ridgecrest Drive, and that's really the only house I can remember.
That's home for you, right?
That was home. That was where the magic was made, on East Ridgecrest Drive.
Now, did you have siblings?
I have two older brothers.
Right.
And it's interesting because we all started school in Kingston when we lived on this side, but most of the folks up on the hill, on the hill as we call it, went to Cherokee. Yeah. So there would be a Kingston bus that came up, and then a Cherokee bus came up too to take kids from there. But I started here at Kingston Elementary, and then junior high, and then Roane County High. Right.
So you went to elementary school here the whole time?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Brake.
Mr. Brake.
He was the principal. I can tell you every teacher I had here. And
sorry about they're mowing the yard.
It's going to look really nice when they get done.
Yeah. Exactly.
First grade was Miss DeVries. Second grade was Miss Rose Ferguson. Third grade was Margaret Prim, who was Gary Prim's grandmother.
Oh, was that right?
And the fourth grade was Mrs. Gaither. Fifth grade was Miss Quiet, and sixth grade was Miss Jackson.
Is that right?
Now they're all fuzzy in junior high and high because we
moved around.
But I think I remember most of my homeroom teachers too. But it was great to come to school here. It's great to come back here today and check it out.
I went a couple of years. Of course, I went to Cherokee because we lived over back behind Cherokee, and I went over there. I guess the first year I started teaching about 3 or 4 years ago.
Rosedale?
No, I lived on Hillcrest.
Hillcrest?
Yes, I lived on Hillcrest.
Well, I knew because I dated a little girl just down the street.
Yeah. Yeah, you did, didn't you? But anyway, I went in there, and the cafeteria, where the cafeteria was, is now the library. And I walked in there and I said, I sure did have a lot of sheet pan pizzas in this room when I was growing up. But yeah, it was weird going back. That's the first time I've been in there. I guess probably since I left, so.
I only ate at the cafeteria here on Hamburger Day.
Uh-huh.
I carried my lunch. I was a finicky eater.
Right.
But Hamburger Day,
and that would be the old cafeteria. We have a new cafeteria, which is probably about 30 or 40 years old, but they still
It's new.
They still call it the new cafeteria. But anyway, so what do you remember about growing up in Kingston? What were the activities you were involved in?
Well, most of my activities were sports.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, at 8, 9, 10 years old, I was down at Cherokee Field playing baseball. Back in those days, kids walked around places, and I'd walk down off the hill or ride my bike down the hill and have my dad bring me back because it's a big hill.
Yeah, it was. It's a big hill.
But we would play
Alma Lane there.
Yes, that's how I got down.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I played even before the league. We would play. I don't know, just pickup games during the daytime.
Yeah.
And then I think it started at 8. It's when
8,
Little League started.
started.
Before Dixie Youth started. And then when Dixie Youth started, the 10, 11, 9, 10, 11, my dad was coach of our team.
He was my coach. I guess we were on a team together.
We must have been.
We must have been, because he was my coach.
And I'll never forget, because I was the catcher, and he told me, he said, "Son, if you don't catch that ball, it better hit you somewhere. Don't let it go to that backstop.
Yeah.
You knock it down somehow." And so that was great. So, and then, of course, Dixie Youth and made the All-Stars a time or two. And then Babe Ruth, we played out of Southwest Point. Up until, I guess that stopped at age
16, I think.
16 or so.
Something like that.
But I played.
I did too. I played 11 years, started when I was 5. Before T-ball, it was just Pee Wee League, I guess, or something like that.
But the city also had a great Saturday basketball league. And
you're at the high school.
They'd have the two courts going all morning and different ages. So I played basketball probably till high school. And that's when I went out for the high school team. I practiced all summer out at Kendall Bedwell's house. He had a goal up there, and Kendall was great, of course. But I really worked on my shot, and I really felt good about it. I could hit, from the mid shot and layups and stuff, and I thought it was really good. And I did not make the freshman team.
Did you hold that against John Skidmore?
John Skidmore was on my naughty list until driver's ed, and I knew I had to be nice.
So who are some of the people that, when you played sports with, some of your teammates? And because sports was a big thing here in Kingston, and there were some kind of outstanding players.
Well, of course, Kendall Bedwell was in every sport, and he excelled in all of them. He was our quarterback in high school, and but Jim Paris was a pitcher, and I was his catcher. Yeah, so I remember him pretty well, and the Strader boys. Jimmy and Johnny, and I remember Mike Stokes was a good pitcher as well. I think he was left-handed, and
Bodie.
Bodie Thomas. Now I didn't play on a team with him because he was a catcher too.
Yeah, exactly.
But I used to love his dad. He was always an umpire.
Oh yeah.
And he had an interesting cadence when he would call those balls strikes.
Right? Hobie Thomas.
Hobie Thomas would go, hike, strikes, and then he'd go for ball.
Yeah,
he didn't say anything really or he'd say no.
Yeah.
But a strike, man, he got excited.
Yeah.
And, so I had him behind me a lot. I'm trying to think of who else. And then in football, I played the Kingston Mini Packers.
Oh, really?
I was a Kingston Mini Packer for a long time, and Joe Sheridan was one of our coaches. And he was just out of school himself, but he was great. And so I played that probably 4 years. First on the 90-pound team, then the 105-pound team.
Where did you play at?
We played on the high school field.
Really?
And then the 125-pound team, I only played 1 year. And I stayed below 105 longer than anybody.
Yeah.
So I was the biggest kid on the
Right.
105-pound team. So I thought,
Right.
man, I'm great. And then the 125-pound team lasted till junior high. So then ninth grade came. It was time to,
Yeah.
well, I think I'm good enough. I'm going to go out for football. And one season of high school football at about 125, 28 pounds as a right guard is when I discovered I was a gospel singer.
That's what I was about to say. My high school football story is, and I was a big old boy. I was always a big kid. And so everybody thought, I should play football. So I guess in the off season, I went out for football and I practiced for a week. And I said, this is not for me. I said,
You're smarter than I was.
This is too much work. I said, people say, did you play football in high school? I said, no, I played guitar. So anyway, that was my choice. You got some great stories about junior high. And I know you've told some stories before, but Mrs. Hobgood was our principal at junior high.
Yes, she was.
Mrs. Giles was one of our teachers.
That was my homeroom teacher,
Your
seventh
homeroom
grade.
teacher. Tell us the story about your fake vomit.
Oh, yeah, that was great. Mr. Johnson, Hugh Johnson, was the science teacher. And he was out. We had a substitute teacher. And our family, my dad was a practical joker, so I got it honest. And,
Right.
I don't know if we'd gone to whatever store it was that had the novelties. I forgot what they call that store at the mall. But they had a little, round plastic vomit with what looked like hamburger meat.
Right.
And I mean, it was great. It was so authentic. And so during class that day, I plopped it down on the floor and made the gag sound. And the lady that was, I can't remember who she was, the substitute teacher, she said, "Oh my, you don't feel well? Go to the restroom." So I picked it up and I started out. She said, "Just go to the office. Just go to the office and tell her what." So
Right.
I sat out in front of the office, and Miss Hobgood, we were all petrified of having to go to the office with her because she was
tough.
and she was great.
Yeah.
Looking back, I think, man, she was wonderful. So I finally came time. She called me in there and closed the door and sat me down in front of her desk and said, "Why are you in here?" And I pulled it out of my pocket and I put it on her desk, and she kind of chuckled a bit.
Yeah.
Which totally surprised me.
Yeah, of course.
And then she got stern again. You know how she would do.
Yeah.
Well, that might have been okay had Mr. Johnson been here today, but since it was a substitute, you shouldn't have done that. And
Right.
she said, "I'll take that," and she put it in the top drawer. She probably took it home and played with it herself.
Yeah, probably. She probably had a drawer full of stuff.
And she told me to go sit in front of the office and look like I had been paddled within an inch of my life. You better, if I look out there and you're not looking sad, then you're going to be in big trouble. So I did. So that's my Miss Hobgood story.
Speaking of paddling, I mean, they did that.
Oh, they did in this building, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Back in the day.
Mrs. Prim was really good at it, and I forgot. Maybe it was Mrs. Gaither that sent me to the office, and Mr. Brake. Let's just say the Board of Education was applied to my seat of knowledge, and learning transpired.
I remember when I was going to Cherokee, Mr. Giles, Mrs. Giles' husband.
Wow, I didn't know that.
He was the principal, little bitty fella, and I remember I was having a tough time in 5th grade. We were having some issues with my older brother at home, and so it was kind of tough that year. And I remember I did something that got sent to the office, and there were a couple other boys that were. Doug Abernathy was one of them, and another one. And he had his Board of Education. He had his paddle, but he decided to sit me in his office and talk to me while he had Doug and the other boy out in the lobby. And he climbed up on a ladder and drew a line with some chalk on the brick wall. He said, "You boys stand here and you jump and you touch that that line until I come back. So that was his punishment for them.
Wow.
Was to make them jump for 30 minutes while he was talking to me. But
another junior high episode was we had Mr. Frog, and bless his heart, to have a name like Mr. Frog with 7th grade boys was we were ruthless. And
was it Sam? Was that
Sam.
Sam Frog? Right.
And
Which
so,
I ran into here just 2 or 3 years ago.
That's great. I'd love to see him.
Yeah.
Because I flipped a rubber band at somebody, and he saw me and caught me.
Yeah.
He said, "You're going to write, 'I will not flip my fellow man with a rubber band 50,000 times.'" And I went home and got 3 pencils, like we used to do.
Of course.
And started writing. And my dad went in there and said, "Are you doing your homework?" "No, I got to write this." "What are you writing?" "I'm writing, 'I will not flip my fellow man with a rubber band 50,000 times.'" He said, "How many?" I said, 50,000 times. He said, "Stop."
Right.
So he went down. And it got cut back to 500.
Sure.
But I learned a lesson that day, too. I have not flipped my fellow man with a rubber band since.
Ever since.
Good education here.
All right. So that was junior high. So high school. Let's talk about, what do you remember about high school? I mean, a lot happened to you in high school. You got involved in a lot of different things, and I want to go into those. But what do you remember about your high school experience here at Roane County High School?
I remember I was very thankful when I started high school because both of my brothers were out of school.
Yeah.
They were not a part of my high school experience. So
was that a blessing or a curse?
Absolute blessing.
Okay. All right.
Because my next oldest brother, David, Mike, the oldest brother, left a good reputation. He was a great student.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really a good student. David was very intelligent, but he was mischievous. And he left a reputation with many of the teachers in high school that I had to follow. And because of his mischievousness, I was glad that he was gone, because whenever I would have friends over and he was home, it was not fun.
Right.
We were Wally and Beaver, or Eddie Haskell and Beaver for those years. But when he went off to school was the 9th grade year, so I was glad.
All right.
And it was different. I mean, we learned to change classes, and I wasn't a great student, to be honest, and so high school was really, really different.
Did you have fun in high school?
Oh, I did. I was a clown.
Yeah.
I clowned my way through most of it. I wasn't a particularly good student. I didn't like to study.
Right.
And somewhere in the freshman year, I think it was the latter part of the freshman year, we always went to church. We were part of Cedar Grove Church, but I was, listening to the Allman Brothers and Santana and all these great rock bands, and I was, raised with country music. I always played music with my dad. He was a guitar player, and we would play. But I started discovering new and different kind of music.
Yeah.
And then I went to see an artist named Sammy Hall.
Okay.
Who had a TV show in Knoxville. So I started watching that, and it was on the contemporary side. Well, it was contemporary then,
right?
Of gospel music. Their hair was longer. Their wardrobe was hip. They were and had a good band and neat songs, and I really plugged in to that.
Yeah.
And on his television show, I used to go up, and Richard Hall had a little Volkswagen, and he would drive because he was old enough to drive, and we would go up to the Sammy Hall show. I was probably 14, 13.
Where was that shot?
At WBIR.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So we'd do that, and then one of the shows, he would have a guest group on from time to time. And when he brought the Oak Ridge Boys, my life changed.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
That was when they came in with that great band and those suits, just the GQ and the hair and the sideburns down to their corners of their mouth. I said, That's what I want to do.
That's what I want to do.
That's what I want to do.
So you decided to start your own little group.
I did. Sammy had the Sammy Hall Singers. At first it was Sammy and his two sisters.
Right.
But they didn't stay long. They started raising families, and they stayed home. And so he got a couple of other girls and a couple of rock musicians that had come to faith. And, man, they were cooking.
Yeah.
So that's who we emulated in the humble Woody Wright Singers.
The Woody Wright Singers.
We did their songs. We did Oak Ridge Boy songs. We did Downing songs.
And this was back when the Oak Ridge Boys was doing gospel music.
They were.
Yeah.
All gospel.
All gospel.
And we went to their studio to make our recordings with their band.
In Brentwood. Was it Brentwood or Hendersonville?
Hendersonville.
That's right. In Hendersonville.
My dad would loan us the money. We'd sell the records and pay him back.
Yeah.
And then we'd borrow again and go again and do it.
So how did you put the Woody Wright Singers together?
Well, we were all part of Cedar Grove. Cedar Grove had started the youth choir with Chuck and Sheila King. And we were kind of the nucleus of the harmony part.
Yeah.
And so two of the girls, there was a soprano and an alto that stood out.
Yeah.
And so they became my girl singers. It was just the three of us. And then we added Gary Prim, who was the
piano player,
piano prodigy here. He
was
playing for folks out at Bradbury since he was tiny.
Yeah.
And then we added Tommy Baker, who was in our class, and played drums, and Dennis Watkins played bass. So we hit the road, got trailer, sound system, and I found a 1974 Kinzer Drug Hallmark calendar, those little ones they gave away.
Oh, yeah.
And I counted up the days that we played. And in 1974, we did 100, a little over 100 concerts.
Is that
or
right?
Churches or whatever we could book.
Yeah, yeah.
So I told someone, now I understand my grade point average because I was not focused on school at all.
Now, what year was this that you started that?
We started in 73.
Okay, so your junior and senior year then, I guess.
Sophomore, junior, and senior.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah. So how did that, and you guys played everywhere. I mean,
we did. We played, around Kingston, of course. We would play for the Democrat meetings for Ruby Lucky out at the park. And then we'd play a Republican mayor candidate show or concert or special music, whatever you want to call it, a picnic. And so we were no respecter of course, back in the 70s, really, political parties coexisted pretty well.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You were not blackballed for talking to one or the other. So if you want us to come sing, we'll come sing for you.
Sure. Did you get paid?
We got paid. Sometimes well and sometimes not well. But
right. I understand.
But, we got paid enough to keep buying new gear and wearing clothes from the body shop.
Oh, yeah.
We were regular customers in there. Of course, and the girls made their dresses for the most part.
Right.
But the four guys,
and they matched.
We'd go down there and get sparkly little shirts.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And we thought we were cool.
Well, this was the 70s, so, I mean, you big old open, long collar.
Oh, yeah, and elephant leg bell-bottom pants.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Plaid even.
And I mentioned, you and I chatted a day or so ago, and I mentioned that this oral history project that we're doing is for the 225th birthday celebration for the city of Kingston. You and I remember the 175th.
Yes.
This was 50 years ago. We were both seniors. And that celebration, as I recall, was on a Saturday. They had a parade. And then as soon as the parade was over, you and your group, the Woody Wright Singers, were singing on the courthouse lawn.
We did.
Tell me about that.
I'm telling you let's see, I can't think of which way the sun, the east and the west is. I think it was
You were facing the Delaney house.
Yes. So whichever direction that was, that's where we sat up. And we played there. And we were excited about it because it was more of a secular thing to work.
Yeah, sure.
Where I was.
Yeah.
And so there were a couple of songs I wanted to learn and do. And one of them was, and you remembered, Stop and Smell the Roses by Mac Davis.
Yeah.
And one of the girls had a little issue because it was not a gospel song.
Right.
But then I reminded her that in the chorus it says, "You're going to find your way to heaven is a rough and rocky road." I said, "See, there's heaven in there. That's
right.
close enough
That's
for me."
close
So
enough.
we wound up doing it.
I remember that.
But that was a big deal. I wore a felt hat that day. I was going for it, man. We were so happy to be a part of that. It was a big deal.
Because there were a lot of people.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a big
it was
crowd.
a festival atmosphere.
Yeah,
It was great to be a part of that.
I remember, and I played. I was, I played guitar and sang too, and I remember playing that same day. Later on in the afternoon, I don't remember what I played. I can remember what you played, but I can't remember what I played for sure. I'm sure it was probably some, Eagles or John Denver or something like that. One of the things that I do recall, speaking of playing and getting paid, is my senior year. And I don't remember how, maybe I did it for a couple of 3 months, is 2 nights a week I would play at the Hut.
Oh, cool.
With my guitar, just me and my guitar, and for a couple of hours. And I got paid like $15 a night plus free dinner, which was pretty good back in 1974.
Why didn't you call me? We could have split that.
I know, that's true. But anyway,
I look back and I am surprised that we didn't play and do things together.
Yeah.
Part of it was the era that it was and being a part of the church and a gospel group.
And I was part of First Baptist Church, and we were mortal enemies with Cedar Grove. Well,
of course.
Because we were dancing, and such.
Dancing
that kind of
Baptist.
stuff.
That a dancing foot and a praying knee can't be on the same leg. That's what we were taught.
Yeah, of course. But and I didn't, I did. Of course, I sang in church, but I played, acoustic and pop music and things such as that. I did have my own little band. It was me and Mark Lloyd, and he played guitar and sang with me. And Ted Wagner was my bass player, and Daryl Cole was my drummer.
I think we did something together one time.
Mm-hmm. We may have
in the elementary auditorium for something.
Probably
we played because I remember that Ted played and feet, as we used to call it. Played drums.
I remember doing a concert at the junior high, and the whole school was there, and you would have thought, I must have had the same kind of experience that you would have all the time. You'd have thought we were rock stars. I mean, it was just like incredible experience. I'll never forget that. But so anyway, so you did that, and then you graduated. What happened after you graduated?
Well, sadly, I look back and I should have gone to Roane State, of course. But since I barely graduated, I didn't think that was financially good for me.
Right.
And I was right. I was a horrible student. But I went to. I'd had a couple of groups that had offered me jobs, even as a teenager, young. I remember my dad took me up to Sammy Hall. Sammy Hall offered me a job.
Oh, is that right?
When I was, I think I was 14 or 15. We were just getting started.
Yeah.
And he took me up there, and we toured the property, and I was so excited. That's my hero, man.
Well, sure, of course.
Wow, I've got to do this. They didn't offer me much money. Gave me free room and board, and to pay for all my meals and that kind of thing. And on the way back from Sevierville, my dad said, "Son, you really want to do that?" I said, "Well, I'd really like to. It's like a dream."
Yeah.
He said, "I'm not going to tell you can't."
Right.
He said, "But I'd really like for you to finish high school."
Yeah.
Because he didn't.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And somehow I gleaned the wisdom from that and said no to
the dream job.
The biggest dream job.
Oh, yeah.
That I could have ever wanted. And stayed in school and finished school, and we kept traveling and singing. We did the Sammy Hall show on TV. We played there once.
Right.
But then in the 80s, I did go to work for Sammy Hall.
Yeah.
So
you did, didn't you?
I got to do that.
So what did you do after you graduated?
I after we saw the Oaks, and I got to meet Little Willie Wynn, who was the tenor singer. And Willie left the Oaks in '73. and he sang with the Statesmen for a little bit, and then he started his own group called the Tennesseans.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to see the Tennesseans in somewhere in Chatsworth, Georgia, or somewhere. We drove down to see him, and I got to actually talk to him and spend a little time with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me his phone number because I told him I was looking for a group to play and sing with, and they were working the circuit.
Sure.
And so every Tuesday for a long time, I would call Willie. I wouldn't call on Monday because they'd come off the road on Sunday night, and
Sure.
he had a family.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd call on Tuesday and ask him if he found me a job.
Yeah.
And so after about almost a year after graduation, he called and said they needed a bass player.
Oh, is that right?
So
Okay.
I moved to Nashville when I was probably had just turned 18.
So did you play the bass?
I played bass, and
Okay.
then in a few months I wound up singing baritone.
Yeah.
And later on with the group I started singing lead. So
Right.
I got older. I was an
Yeah.
18-year-old baritone.
Sure,
You can imagine
sure.
that, trying to have that big voice.
Who was the guy? Who was the guy that sang with you?
Tennesseans?
Yeah.
That would have been Elmer Cole,
Elmer Cole.
who wrote 10,000 Years.
10,000 Years.
Yeah.
That's right.
So Willie and Elmer were my mentors.
Uh-huh.
They really, I'd never been on a bus before,
Yeah.
traveling and night after night like that. And they were patient and kind.
Right.
And they saw that I had some ability and helped me with my attitude, because if it wasn't the Oak Ridge Boys or something similar, it was horrible.
Right. Exactly.
And so Willie really educated me and said, he called me aside one day and said, "Woody, how could anybody get as negative as you are in 18 years?"
Really?
Because he was a big positive thinker.
Yeah,
Everything's
sure.
positive. If you can visualize it, you can achieve it. That kind of thing he taught. So that was, he fathered me while I was away from my father.
Sure.
And so that was really good for me.
And you're still
But that's
friends.
when I left Kingston.
Yeah, you're still friends today.
We are.
Yeah. I mean, good friends.
Yes, he is 87.
Is that right?
And I did a recording on him about, 8 or 10 years ago.
Really?
Got the Oak Ridge Boys to sing on it, and all the people that he's sung with over the years, Elmer and we're all made cameos. Michael Sykes and David Ponder that I sang with, we all came together for a Willie record.
Right.
But that's how I got to Nashville and started the music portion of my career.
Right.
That is,
And you continued on, and you had several different groups that you sang with, and you did several different things.
well, money got tight in the Tennesseans,
Right.
and I left
Okay.
because I needed to make a living.
Sure.
It was they had a bunch of personnel changes, couldn't get a rhythm going, and it wasn't
Right.
happening.
Sure.
And that's when I went to Frostproof, Florida, and was a choir, music, and youth director.
Was that right?
I was 19.
How old were
19 or 20.
Right.
They put an inmate in charge of the asylum.
Right.
So I took what I'd learned in Kingston.
That sounds like trouble.
It probably was.
Probably was.
In hindsight, but I took what I learned in Kingston at Cedar Grove. When Chuck, Chuck King was just a magnet for young people.
Yeah,
And he was
sure.
a master at making it exciting and fun, and he built that choir. We had anywhere from 75 to 100 voices at the top of it. And so we were right in the middle of that. And we had gone to Frostproof from Kingston to sing at that church on our way to Disney World. You know. That's another one. We'd always take a tour every summer.
Sure,
We'd go to work our way to Florida and spend time at Disney World. So Chuck was thinking.
Yeah.
And so that church, we went every year.
Yeah.
So when they needed a youth guy, I think Chuck probably recommended me.
Yeah.
And I went down there for 2 years, built a choir, made
Yeah.
recordings, and we made trips to Gatlinburg.
Right, sure, of course.
From Florida.
Okay.
So I did that for a couple of years until Willie called back and said, hey, we've got an opportunity here. Our lead singer is gone, and we are doing background vocals for Billy Crash Craddock on the road.
Oh, okay.
So he told me what he could pay me, and so I resigned and
Right.
hightailed it back to Nashville. And this was country music. So we
Yeah.
sang behind Crash Craddock, but we did shows with Conway Twitty, Marty Robbins, Merle Haggard, and, Loretta Lynn. This was in the late 70s. Yeah, 78, 79.
Right.
So then I was exposed to
It was different.
country music.
It was different, wasn't it?
It was.
Lifestyle was different.
It was.
Yeah.
Very different. So I got a different kind of education
Yeah, sure, of course.
on that road.
Of course.
So I did that for a few years.
Uh-huh.
And trying to think. No, I didn't. I spent more time after that here.
Oh, did you?
Coming home. It's just a couple hour drive.
Yeah.
And so I would come home off the road and see the folks
Sure, of course.
and look at the water.
Uh-huh. And think about life and think about
Yeah, a little different.
What you're going to do with the
A
rest
little
of your
different
life.
perspective, Of course, my mom always said, now, son, that playing music, that's just playing. You need to get a job.
Of course.
And so I have successfully proved to her that I could find music jobs.
Right. Exactly. Now, were you writing songs at this time?
I always wrote. Even in high school, I was writing some songs. We recorded one or two of the things that I wrote in early teens. And
Were they any good?
no,
Well, of course not.
But,
That's
they're-
okay.
to me they were great.
They were yours.
They're my babies.
That's exactly right.
Every song I ever wrote was my babies. But and in that, Elmer Cole, being a successful songwriter, gave me tips.
Of course.
So I learned some things about phrasing and not using consonants and things like that. I disagree with him now, but just little tidbits that he would teach, and but all through I've written. I mean, I was monkeying with the song this morning, so. And that's what I used to pray, in my little bedroom up there. Lord, someday, let somebody just record one of my songs. And so,
Okay.
at last count, about 150 of my songs have been recorded.
Is
and
that
released.
right?
So my faith was big, but my vision was small.
Sure. I understand. All right, so let's get you to. So you had this career as a singer-songwriter, and you were part of different groups, but now you live in Indiana.
True.
Tell me about how you got to Indiana.
Well, after you survive in the music business, and you dance from group to group, opportunity to opportunity, networking. It's like any other business. It's all about contacts.
Yeah,
and you use your contacts to find your feet. And so I had been on the road with a country group called Matthews, Wright and King, and we were recording for Columbia Records, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, big deal.
When in the high school walls, I would spend most of my class time drawing the Columbia Records logo, and drawing oak leaves on things. And so to sign with Columbia Records was a huge deal. And we made 2 recordings, and we toured with Reba McEntire for 2.5 years.
Wow.
With Brooks and Dunn, Vince Gill, Sawyer Brown, and so this was the big show.
Sure.
We were doing amphitheaters and basketball halls.
Right.
I mean, Carnegie Hall, Radio City Music Hall. It was just nuts. It
Yeah.
was great. And we never were able to crack the top 20.
Yeah.
We charted with songs, but, the top 20 is what keeps you going.
Sure.
It sells records. And we had some nominations and things. It was a good thing, but that came to an end. Mm-hmm. And I had a baby daughter, and I needed a job. Mm-hmm. So Bill Gaither and Mark Lowry and Michael English were starting a record company, a gospel record company, and they wanted someone to manage publishing.
Now, did you know them before?
I knew Michael English.
Right.
And I I met Mark Lowry. He came to Cedar Grove when we were kids.
Yeah.
So, but when they did that, and I talked to my buddy Michael Sykes, who was producing the Gaither vocal band at the time, was coming off the road. I said, I need a job, man. I need it. And he said, well, might have something. Gaither's looking for someone to represent their catalog to Nashville, because they're in Indiana. And to take the publishing of the artists for the new record company and manipulate their material too.
Sure.
And to pair them with other writers So I did that. That's how I got to know the Gaithers, and worked with them there for probably almost 3 years before the Primetime Country Nashville Network opportunity came for me to be the leader of the background singers for that show.
Okay.
And that's a whole another story. That was amazing to work with artists of every genre of music for almost 3 years.
Yeah.
People like Chuck Negrin of Three Dog Night and every country artist, Kenny Rogers, Willie Nelson. We sang behind everybody, the rock artists and pop artists too. And then that show ended, and I went back to work for Gaither.
Oh, did you?
And shortly after that, I met Vonnie Gaither, and she is the widow of Danny Gaither, Bill Gaither's brother.
Right.
And we started talking and talking. And
One thing led to another.
And visiting, and
Yeah.
fell in love, and decided to get married. And so I brought Vonnie down to Nashville to look at homes, to see if we could get a house and live happily ever after. But her mom was a Polish immigrant, and she was aging. And Vonnie had a great job with county government up there. She worked for them for decades.
Right.
And it became clear that moving to Indiana was a lot more practical than her walking away from her retirement and her whole thing. So I moved to Alexandria, Indiana, home with the Gaithers. And I was still doing Gaither concerts. I didn't say that part, but I was out on the tour with Gaither when Vonnie and I started seeing each other.
Which is kind of, as I recall, and I could be wrong about this, the Gaithers have been around a long time, okay, but they were really not part of the Southern gospel music.
Correct.
So it's a little ironic that you started out in Southern gospel and ended up being such a big part of the Gaither family.
It's interesting.
Is it because when we're young we're just stupid and we just don't know anything?
No, it's because when we're young we like what we like.
Yeah.
And their music was a little, especially in the 70s, was way more tame than what, say, the Oak Ridge Boys, and the Imperials, and the Downings. They were edgy, contemporary. The Gaithers were more palatable to church people.
Right.
And their songs were simpler and singable, more singable. And
it's more like worship music is today.
Correct. Now, I said that to him once. He said, no, it's not.
Right.
But it was
kind of in between.
It was the same. It was church people, and they would pack. I mean, they were massive.
Yeah. Sure.
With their concerts, but Bill was a Southern gospel quartet guy at heart.
Yeah.
He didn't let that keep him from making a living.
Right.
But writing the songs, and he'll tell you too that the smartest thing he ever did was marry a poet. And Bill did the music, but the lyrics were all Gloria.
Yeah.
And she was a master.
I remember.
And that her lyric and his music was a perfect marriage, because when you got Because He Lives, and of course Bill will tell you he's got a PG song. He Touched Me. He wrote Pre-Gloria.
Yeah. There you go.
But he loved the Statesman Quartet. He loved the Blackwood Brothers. I mean, they would go from Indiana to Ryman for the all-night sings. His dad would drive him down there as a teenager. He'd go to the Stamps Baxter School of Music in Texas every summer to study that music form.
Yeah.
And he's pretty amazing to be around, because he remembers it all. He knows who wrote everything. He knows all about the quartet, the 50s,
Right.
40s and 50s and 60s quartet era. He's the purveyor of all of that. And he brought those people into his concert arena.
Sure.
And he became closer to Southern gospel in the 90s.
Because of that, because he brought them together.
Brought them back and
for
revitalized
these homecoming concerts.
He revitalized the Goodmans and Jake Hess from the Imperials. And so I had to adjust when I went to work with them, and then we started co-writing quite a lot. And I would bring my different chord structures and my different melodic ideas, and to them then it was fresh.
Yeah.
And the vocal band started recording my songs.
Oh, really?
With them, and it was and we still write. And this last 4 or 5 years through COVID, we wrote another probably 8 or 10 songs that they've used.
Is that right? So he had the Bill Gaither trio, and then he also had the vocal band.
Yes.
I remember having, when I was interim music director at Trenton Street in Harriman, we brought in Gary McSpadden for a concert. I thought he was the greatest singer in the world.
Great.
He was a great singer.
He's a great guy too.
Yeah. So anyway,
but I got to meet all those people.
Yeah.
I'd already met some of the gospel people, but to be friends and to get to know Jake Hess, who was my favorite. He was Elvis's favorite singer. Elvis said Jake Hess was, that's where Elvis got that. It's from Jake.
Yeah.
But he was the neatest guy and funny, just naturally funny. So I gleaned a lot from him out on the road. I would hang with him, sit with him off stage, and I love the color commentary that he would give, and I'd give him some back. It's kind of like a gypsy caravan out there, In the heyday of the Gaither homecoming concert, there would be 10, 15 buses out there.
Sure.
And it was a rock and roll show.
So how long have y'all been doing that?
Well, I started. I worked in the publishing for a while, and I would sing their demos, and I would sing the scratch vocals for the tracks for the homecoming videos. And finally, Bill started taking me on the road because he found a song for me. Yeah. And he said, he called me one day and he said, Woody, I want you to go to Red Rocks with us, and I want you to sing John Denver's "Hey, It's Good to Be Back Home Again." And I thought he was kidding. I said, man, I started laughing. He said, no, I want you to do it. I said, Bill, your people are not going to go for a country song on this gospel. That's my mindset. I learned that early on. He said, well, what's not gospel about it? I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, what's not gospel about a truck driver wanting to get home and be with his family? I said, well, I don't. And I started stumbling. He said, what's wrong with a family sitting around the around the fire at home with a good meal? What's not gospel about that, Woody? I said, okay, Bill, I'll do it. I'll do it. You're obviously serious, and I'll do it. And it changed my life.
And that's what I was about to say.
That day is the day I met my wife in Denver. I sang the song that more people have heard me sing than any other song I've ever done. Yep. And I've had truck drivers come up to me at concerts with tears in their eyes saying, "You never know what that song meant to me
Wow.
when you sang it." And I thought, wow. Because there's no secret. John Denver was just a little too plain for me growing up.
Yeah.
But I love him now.
You know, a couple other things I want to ask you about. One is you traveled quite a bit to Europe, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
After I moved to Indiana, actually, we were at the Praise Gathering. The Gaithers used to have in Indianapolis every year. It was a big festival where all styles of Christian music were there, and all styles of Christian speakers were there. It was a wonderful thing. And so we all had our products set up outside, and a gentleman walked up to me from Norway, and he introduced himself, and he said, "Will you come to Norway?" I said, "Sure." He said, "When?" I said, "Now." And he loved it, got a laugh out of it. We exchanged information, so they called and they wanted to bring us over because they were in a very small community in Norway, south of Oslo, and they have a club. Someone had given one of his community people a Gaither homecoming video, and she had surgery or leg surgery and couldn't leave. She didn't know what it was. She just put it in and watched it. And it was so moving for her that when she was in tears and her husband came home, she said, "You've got to see this. You've got to hear it, see and hear this." So they watched it, and they both sat and wept. And then there was another couple that they invited over, and then the third couple. So these three gentlemen started a club called the it was Finnsland, Norway, as the little town. So they started the Finnsland Gaither Music Club.
Is that
and
right?
once a month, they would go to their church, the Finnsland Bedehus, which is prayer house, and they would watch a different Gaither video every month.
Wow.
So they knew all of us.
Sure.
And so that's when he asked me if we would come to their little Bedehus.
Right.
And I said, "Yeah, we'll do it." And he asked how much it would cost. I said, "We get the airfares and the lodging, and we'll be happy to come." So then they called and said, "Will you do more than one concert?" I said, "Yeah, I'll do the same thing as many times as you want." So they booked 5 different churches
Is that right?
in Norway for us to go. And so we created relationships with all those people in Norway.
So who went?
Just Bonnie and me.
Okay.
We had a new recording that we had done together. And so we went, and then and Stephen Hill and I he's another Gaither artist. They wanted some Christmas programs, so Bonnie didn't go on those, but Stephen and I went and did the Christmas shows because we had a Christmas album together. And so Stephen said, "I've got some friends in Sweden." And so we went to Sweden, and we'd do multiple Christmas shows, and then Bonnie and I would go to Sweden in the summer seasons.
Yeah.
And then he had another friend in the Netherlands, so our Christmas tour became, and we did it before the weather was bad.
Yeah.
And we would do 15 or 20 Christmas programs in Norway, Sweden, and the Netherlands.
Wow.
And then come back to the States, and we'd do the Christmas tour in the States, another 10 or 12 shows. So Christmas
was big.
Paid off all our credit cards every year.
I'm sure it did.
For a long time. But it was interesting. And then the Swedish ones, they began to do some festivals, and they would have me host because Gaither couldn't come there. They couldn't afford Gaither or the vocal band.
Sure.
I was the homecoming friend they could afford.
Yeah.
And
right.
So I would host for years, and they bring over 5 or 6 gospel groups.
Yeah.
And Bonnie and I would host.
Wow.
So that was great, and we did that up until COVID. It stopped then, and they don't do it as often now. They bring some people over, but they don't do the festivals anymore. Maybe they will. But
one of the other things that I want you to talk about is you really, because of your career and what you've done, you've got to meet your heroes. And not only meet them, you've become friends with some of your heroes.
Oh, yeah. As you know, I carved Larry Gatlin's name in every school desk that I sat in. And he was my hero. And I got to meet Larry, and I got Larry to sing on one of my recordings. And then I had some concert videos we shot, and Larry was a guest. So we've been pals since then. And all the Oak Ridge boys, I've known them from the beginning.
Sure.
When we went to their studio and got to meet them then.
And recently you filled in for Dwayne, didn't you?
This last year when Dwayne Allen, the lead singer's wife, was ill and would later pass, Dwayne called and asked me to fill in for him.
Wow.
And I don't want to get super spiritual or anything, but the Bible does say if we set our minds on Him, He will give us the desires of our heart.
Yeah.
It may take 50 years. like it did because I used to dream of being an Oak Ridge boy.
Oh, you were for at least one night. You were the lead singer of the Oak Ridge Boys, weren't you?
4 nights.
4 nights.
4 shows.
Wow.
Actually, 5 shows, 4 nights.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I'm sure it was
to get to do that, and I'm thankful.
Yeah.
You can believe I've got the photos. I've got the photographic proof. Got some of the videos and all that of people took while we were out there. But what a great opportunity to do, and it's because of Kingston.
That's what I was. That's what I was about to get to.
It's because of the upbringing, because of the stimuli around here, because of the gospel music show on the Knoxville television that beamed into Kingston, and it's not coincidence that the Oak Ridge boys, that all of that. I'm just thankful for being from here because this small town was a great place to grow up. I forgot who I was telling that this week. Any other city I may or may not have been able to do what I've been blessed to do.
Right.
But playing in the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade band, I was the worst trombone player in the band. And so
the Kingston, at least at that time, and it may still be the same way, is okay. It was. They encouraged our young people to dream and to be and to pursue what they wanted to pursue, didn't they?
They did, and even the teachers would tell you if you will apply yourself, you can be what you want to be.
Sure,
you can do what you want to do.
Sure,
and encouraging us to. They didn't browbeat us to make good grades. They encouraged us to make good grades.
Yeah.
They invited us to study at least enough to pass.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm thankful for this town.
And to dream big. Big. I mean, for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some folks who were like, well, this is your life. This is what it's going to be. So get you a job at the plant. And,
right.
There was that, but there were others that said, no, you don't. That's not what you have to do.
And there are guys that got jobs at the plant that are thriving.
Sure,
they work their way up and make.
We grew up with people all the time. All right, a couple other things I wanted to ask you about. Who are some of the artists that have recorded your songs?
Oh wow. Well, of course, the vocal band has recorded the most, but wow, Barbara Fairchild, country artist, Barbara Fairchild, Charlie Pride, I can't remember.
Connie Francis,
did record Closer to Crazy, a country song that I wrote when I was, 20?
Sure.
Wow, the gospel music people,
Yeah.
Karen Peck and New River, Triumph and Quartet.
Sure.
I should open up my webpage and I could tell you more, but Mark Lowry.
Yeah. I'm sure you've won awards.
I have, and what was really cool, a couple of years ago, I was inducted into the Tri-State Gospel Music Hall of Fame for Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
To have that recognition. I've had several songs nominated for Dove Awards and projects. I've had songs that are on Grammy Award-winning projects.
Yeah.
I produced a project that was nominated for a Grammy. So I've been able to do what I always wanted to do, and it's probably bigger than I ever dreamed.
Well, yeah, of course.
And
Life is like that, isn't it?
And to do the Nashville Network TV show with all of those people, with a world-class band and singers. My 15, 16-year-old head would have exploded if you told me. And I think that's part of why we can't handle the future. That's why we don't know it.
Right.
Because we wouldn't be able to even comprehend it, to know the good and the bad that's coming.
Yeah.
And I've just been blessed, just totally blessed.
Woody, thank you so much for coming and talking to me. I appreciate it.
Keith, it's been great. I hope there's something you can use, and just, for all you Kingston folks, this is a great world. And I'm honored and blessed to say I'm a Yellow Jacket. Yellow Jacket till I die.
That's right. All right. Very good.